The trial of fugitive Iraqi Vice President Tariq Hashimi is postponed once again, with Turkey ignoring an Interpol Red Notice seeking his arrest. So, will Ankara's decision complicate his case? And what are the repercussions of Hashimi's trial in an already volatile region? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. Iraqi Vice President Tariq al-Hashimi remains on the run despite Iraqi efforts to get him home. His trial has just been postponed for a second time, a day after Turkey said it wouldn't extradite him. With Turkey promising to continue to support him, the consequences of Hashimi's trial are already rippling through the region, as Kamal Santamaria now reports.
He's the Vice President of Iraq and an international fugitive. Tariq al-Hashimi, who's on a visit to Istanbul, is accused by the Iraqi government of overseeing death squads and masterminding attacks that targeted government officials. But Turkey says it will not extradite Hashimi, who was set to be tried in absentia in Baghdad on Thursday. The announcement came a day after Interpol issued a red notice for his arrest, a request likely to increase pressure on Turkey to take action against al-Hashimi. Turkey's refusal to send Hashimi back to Baghdad highlights a much deeper political crisis. Ties between the two countries are already tense. The Turkish government has long demanded Iraq prevent members of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, from using its territory, stop all rebel activities and hand over their leaders to Turkey, a request it says has so far not been met with a positive response. And with the increasing tensions between the two countries, Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki accused Turkey of becoming what he called a hostile country. But the regional consequence of this case goes beyond Turkey. In April, al-Hashimi visited Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Both countries also refused to extradite him. The decision to welcome al-Hashimi rather than send him home was seen as a direct attempt to undermine what the Gulf countries see as an Iraqi government much too close to Iran. Al-Hashimi's accused the Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki of fueling a sectarian fire, echoing the concerns of many Sunnis inside the country who feel they've been sidelined by a Shia-led government. And with an arrest warrant hanging over Iraq's most senior Sunni official, many think Iraq's long-running sectarian tensions could be about to get much worse. Kamal Santamaria for Inside Story.
So is Hashimi's trial a political or a criminal one? To help answer this question, we're joined by guests in Baghdad. Muwaffak Al Rubaiee, former Iraqi National Security Advisor; in Ankara, Huseyin Bagci, political analyst and professor at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara; and in Oslo, Mark Taylor, international criminal law expert. Welcome to all of you, gentlemen. Let me start off with you, Mr. Al Rubaiee. This is so much more than a court case, isn't it?
Well, it is purely and squarely within the court case, I think, because there are 150 charges, legal charges, with confession and material evidence and records, and well, there are several dozens of his private security details have confessed that he was guiding and he was financing the fugitive Vice President Hashimi was guiding and financing some of the terrorist act. Now,
but he says
whether
this
he's
is all,
innocent,
excuse me interrupting, he says this is all part of the political plot against him. Any truth in that?
Well, he bound to say this, wouldn't he? If I were him, to be quite honest with you, I would come back to Baghdad and face the trial and embarrass those who are, as he said, politically motivated in charging him with these serious charges. These are serious charges, and if he's innocent, as he said he is, then if I were him, I would come back to Baghdad and explain myself and defend myself. See, the government of Iraq is following the constitution of Iraq. There is a legal code of practice in Iraq the government of Iraq is following that. There is a procedure. It started with interrogation, investigation, and then referral to the court. And the court issued a warrant arrest, and that went to the Interpol, and we issued, the government of Iraq issued a red notice, and now his movement is quite restricted, to be quite honest with you. And 190 countries will be bound legally to arrest him and bring him by force back to Baghdad.
Okay.
If I were him, I would come back and face the trial.
Okay, you say he's bound. Obviously, certainly look after him, harbour him, but we know he's in Turkey, Mr. Bagci. Any chance of Turkey handing him over?
I don't think so. First of all, the Turkish government declared yesterday that Turkey is under no conditions is extraditing Mr. Hashimi unless Mr. Hashimi is deciding to leave the country by his own will. If it is not the case, probably Turkey is not going to make use of a right to extradite him to Iraqi government, to Iraqi administration. When he arrived in Ankara and in Istanbul, he was taken by Turkish Prime Minister, by Foreign Minister. They stated publicly some talks and is at the moment a welcomed guest in Ankara. Most probably the Turkish government is putting more on the Iraqi Kurds rather than central government of Iraq, where the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan had some conflicts in recent days with the Prime Minister from Iraq, Maliki. So the Turkish-Iraqi relations in this framework are getting cooler, but the Turkish side, at least to the Turkish government's officials, is not intending to deliver Mr. Hashimi to Iraqi government or administration.
Okay, I want to talk about that relationship in more detail, but right now let's just talk about the Interpol's memorandum called the Red Notice, which gives a regional and international alert to all the agencies, 190 member countries. The Red Notice requested by Iraqi authorities against Tariq al-Hashimi will restrict his ability to travel and cross international borders, help the national police forces of Interpol member countries locate and arrest him, or file a formal request for extradition. However, Interpol does not have the authority to issue arrest warrants in the formal sense of the word, and this is the domain of the sovereign member states. Mr. Taylor, where does this leave Turkey? Our guest was just telling us there that Turkey has no intention of handing him over.
Yeah, Turkey will have to review its extradition treaty with Iraq, which I'm sure they have done. Having a quick look at it on the internet, my understanding is that Turkey can decide not to extradite if they feel that the person who is subject to the Red Notice is in some way a subject of persecution. And they clearly seem to be of the view that that's the case in this case. As far as I know, Iraq hasn't actually asked for extradition yet, so it's a moot point at the moment. But when they do, the Iraqi government is going to be forced to make a political decision.
Mr. Taylor, meaning what?
They're going to have to make a decision as to whether to respect that request for extradition from Iraq. And as I just mentioned, they have under that treaty the scope for basically saying, no, we think that this is a politically motivated charge, a politically motivated process, that Mr. Hashimi is subject to a form of political prosecution, and on that basis, we will decide not to honor the extradition request. But as I said, it's not clear that that request has even been made formally yet.
Mr. Bagci, you mentioned that relations were increasingly strained between Turkey and Iraq. How do you think Turkey is going to use Hashimi? I mean, will they use it as a negotiating tool? Because it's already been raised that Erdogan is accusing the Iraqi leader of fanning tensions between the country's Shiites, Sunnis and Kurds with these self-centered ways. What was he referring to there?
Yes, first of all, it is a very difficult situation for Turkey, for Turkish government in particular, because the Turkish-Iraqi relations have been flourishing in the recent years. So there were a lot of common bilateral treaties, 49 in numbers. So the conflict between Hashimi and Maliki, it is indeed an internal political conflict of Iraq, where Turkey does not have any influence. Therefore, the Turkish side had in recent weeks more and more the verbal confrontation with the Maliki government. First time in the last 7 years that the Turks and the Iraqis have been exchanging this type of hard words in the level of prime minister. But
because Turkey also wants Iraq to do more about the PKK, don't they?
Yes, definitely. You're right. When you say whether Turkey is going to use, when Turkey is going to use Hashimi, I mean, this word use is a little bit complicated, but Turkey is definitely, as far as I can analyze, is putting her cards more on northern Iraqi administration. Barzani was also in Turkey recently. He has experienced a very high level presence here, whereas Turkey and central government of Iraq are getting more and more confrontational. So I think in the final analysis, Turkey is not an arbitrator between Hashimi and Maliki in this framework, because Mr. Hashimi, as you put also in the beginning of the program, is charged by politically motivated issues within the Iraqi constitution. So Turkey does not have any influence in this framework. But Turkey, also from political cultural point of view, is not interested to deliver Mr. Hashimi, even if there is an Interpol request, even if Turkey is part of this. If I have time, I can give you an example. In the late 90s, when Abdullah Öcalan, the PKK leader, was in Italy, Turkey was asking for extradition. And the Italian government has not done it more than 2.5 months. And then the government of Italy forced Mr. Öcalan to leave the country, and he left to Kenya. So in this case, Turkey will keep Mr. Hashimi here, definitely for a certain period, but would ask him to go to another country in the long run. It cannot last forever that Mr. Hashimi is remaining in Turkey.
And Mr. Al Rubaiee, that's what I was saying when I said this is just so much more than a court case. The political ramifications are enormous. Nouri al-Maliki has branded Turkey a hostile state with a sectarian agenda coming off the back of this court case. What do you think he was trying to get at by saying that?
Well, Turkey should stop intervening in the internal Iraqi affairs. Hashimi now is a fugitive vice president of Iraq, now is in Turkey. They should extradite him to Iraq. Now, if they continue interfering in the internal affair of this country, they will alienate everybody in the country. Now, Turkey has two choices. Number one is to carry on saying this politically motivated, and my colleague from Turkey now, he said the Prime Minister of Turkey and the Foreign Minister of Turkey has decided on Mr. Hashimi to do this and that. This is not for them to decide. I'm talking about the legal system. The court system in Iraq has done this. The Interpol in Iraq and the international Interpol has done that, and that's what they have to do. Now, there are two options in front of Turkey. Number one is to continue doing this and make it a political issue. And number two is to hand over the guy to the Iraqi court, and he can have his full legal representation defending him in the Iraqi court. And this Iraqi court, wherever it happens to be, but obviously it has to be in Iraq. Now, he cannot choose the whereabouts of this of the court he's going to be tried in. So Turkey, I think,
but that's exactly what he's asking for, isn't he? Excuse me, jumping in here.
If they refuse
Mr. Taylor,
to extradite,
he's asking to
if they refuse,
face trial, but not in Baghdad. Is that a possibility, Mr. Taylor?
The courts in Iraq have jurisdiction over crimes in Iraq. it's clear that the court in Iraq has jurisdiction to put the vice president on trial here. If there was going to be a move to have a court somewhere else, you know, similar to the Megrahi trial with Libya that was held in Scotland, that would be subject to very, you know, extensive political negotiation. I think it's important to recognize here that, as my colleague was saying, the colleague from Baghdad was saying at the beginning of the program, the Red Notice is always issued by Interpol after a review of whether or not there's been a, you know, investigation and due process in the country making the request. In this case, Iraq. So when Interpol issues a Red Notice, it does so on the basis of that very kind of narrow and rigid definition, specifically to avoid the interference of political interests, yeah? To be able to check that there's at least due process that has gone on in targeting this person for arrest and extradition. We should keep in mind that there are literally thousands of Red Notices issued by Interpol on the basis of requests for arrest by their 190 member states. Thousands of those Red Notices are issued every year, and thousands of people are arrested and returned to the countries in which they are wanted. So this is not some sort of extraordinary procedure. This is actually the way international law enforcement works.
Okay, so right now this leaves him in Turkey. We've heard that Turkey's not going to hand him over. Mr. Al Rubaiee, what do you make of his journey? He started in the Kurdish region of Iraq, then he went to Qatar, then he went to Saudi Arabia, and he's now ended up in Turkey.
Well, this is a desperate attempt on the fugitive Vice President Hashimi to rally support for his case, that this is a politically motivated case. And he will, if he is listening to me now, I think he will take my advice very seriously, that I can tell him that 150 of his guards have, some of them confessed, some of them have produced material evidence that he was associated with guiding and financing some terrorist acts in the country. Also, he was associated closely to the death squad in the country, car bombs and suicide vests as well, against some judges, against some police officers, against some military officers in the country. So there are the very serious charges these are. And if I were him, honestly, I will come back to Baghdad, and I know he's as a brave man, and come back and face this trial and defend myself and prove my innocence. And
okay.
This is, I think, the only way forward. And this is the only way also to stop the sectarian polarization in the country, which is now sky high, you know?
No, but do you think that's the only route? I mean, he accuses Maliki, as many other people do in the region, of entrenching the sectarian divides as he looks after his own.
Well, if you are the Prime Minister of Iraq and the chief, the chief commander of the military, of the armed forces, and you are presented with this evidence, irrevocable evidence, against the Vice President of the country, what would you do? Would you keep quiet and being then afterward being accused to be complacent with the Vice President, or to bring it and send it to the for interrogation and investigation, and the court and the legal system to take its role?
Okay,
of course
I
he
certainly
has to.
I hear what you're saying.
Otherwise, he would be accused of being complacent with the Vice President.
I hear what you say. I'm trying to broaden this out a little bit, Mr. Bagci, and maybe you can help me do this. Looking at the sort of increasing polarization in the region that this court case has highlighted.
I think my colleague from Baghdad makes a mistake. Turkish interference in Iraqi domestic affairs. I think it is not the case. But the Iraqi side was asking Turkey when the government was built up a couple of years ago, that the Turks have been helping for the establishment of the government, which lasted so many months. So the second one is, I think Turkey is not handing Mr. Hashimi. This is, at the moment, the official view in Ankara. I think, on the other hand, the Turkish-Iraqi relations will definitely worsen in the coming weeks because Mr. Maliki he's having a lot of troubles with Mr. Barzani. Now, the conflict between the Kurds and the Arabs, not only the sectarian division, but also the ethnic division, is getting more and more stronger. I think in one point, my colleague in Baghdad has right. It is an internal problem of Iraq, constitutional problem that the vice president is charged with so many criminal, in quotation, acts. But for Turkey, important point is that this gentleman, Mr. Hashimi, is in Turkey, is here guest, and he will probably will leave one day. But when it is, we don't know. But Turkey has no tradition, no culture to hand over any political motivated, if you want, safe haven seeking person in the history, in today and in the future. So it will be complicating bilateral relations, definitely, but in the final analysis, it will be Mr. Hashimi who will decide to leave Turkey and to go either to Iraq or to somewhere else.
In the meantime, Mr. Al Rubaiee, I mean, this is benefiting Maliki, isn't it, as he consolidates power in the country, but certainly isolating his relationship with Kurdistan.
Well, on the contrary, I think Mr. Maliki popularity is sky high now, and because he's standing for the federal government interest. Well, this is a language we don't want to use, the Sunni versus Shia and Kurds versus Arabs. We wanted to talk about Iraq and Iraq as a unified country, as an independent sovereign country led by a federal government with regions and with provinces. That's
well, I mean, the Kurdish autonomous region is already threatening to secede from Iraq if the government crisis is not resolved.
Well, the self-determination of any nation in the world is a sacred right, and it's an integral right according to the United Nations Charter, according to all international norms. So, but the Kurds have not been asked whether to stay in Iraq or to leave Iraq. They have not been given that opportunity to. And I honestly believe, if they are given the opportunity to vote to stay within Iraq or to leave Iraq, I believe the overwhelming majority of Kurds will vote to stay in Iraq because they are benefiting from Iraq and they have nowhere to go. This is their country. They are part and parcel of this country. They are an integral part of this country, and I believe they are the founder of New Iraq. They are one of the founder of New Iraq, and they should enjoy democracy, federalism, and the human rights in Iraq. And this is the only insurance policy for the future of Kurdistan as an autonomous entity within Iraq, is to stay within the Union of Iraq.
There are so many issues on the table, obviously, Mr. Taylor. I guess it's essential that this case is being seen as a criminal and not a political one for the unity in Iraq and the region.
I think it's extremely important that the judicial process be given the opportunity to go forward. But let's not be naive here. Anytime you put a vice president or any senior person on trial, the ramifications of doing so are going to be very political. And what you see happening here is a political game being played out through the legal rules, if you will. The legal rules applied in Iraq, the legal rules applied in Turkey, and the legal rules applied with respect to red notices and Interpol. But there is a political game that is being played out through these rules, but those rules also constrain the ability of the politicians to completely override the human rights at issue here or the rule of law at issue here. Let's not forget, even though a red notice has been issued, Mr. Hashimi is considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And I think my colleague from Baghdad is quite right. He should probably return to Baghdad and face a court of law.
If we could end off with those final words from Mark Taylor. Thank you very much talking to us from Oslo. In Baghdad, Mr. Al Rubaiee, and in Ankara, Mr. Bagci. Thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you want to send your feedback or any thoughts, please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. As always, thanks for watching. Bye.